I refuse, Ji-hoon said, his voice shaking but holding firm. The chairman merely smiled, a thin, cruel line. Then I make the choice for you. He snapped his fingers, and one of the bodyguards moved toward Amara. Don't touch her. Ji-hoon roared, abandoning all pretense of control. He moved with an explosive, trained violence that Amara had only glimpsed before. He launched himself at the bodyguard, ignoring his father completely. He struck the man hard and low, driving him backward into a piece of furniture with a splintering crash. The second bodyguard lunged. Ji-hoon met him, not with brute force, but with the ruthless, practiced economy of a trained fighter. The fight was silent, lethal, and shockingly fast. Ji-hoon had always seemed reluctant to use his skills. Now he unleashed them, his movements fueled by desperate protection. The chairman watched, unmoving, his expression shifting from cold amusement to a chilling pride in his son's violence. Ji-hoon, panting, bleeding slightly from a cut on his cheek, stood over the two immobilized men. He looked at his father, his eyes blazing with hatred. I won't become you, he spat out. And I won't sacrifice her. You already have, the chairman said, his voice dangerously quiet. You just chose the wrong side of the battle. He walked past the fighting toward the door, not looking back. You have made your final choice, my son. The syndicate will clean up your mess. And the Shinsik gang will be waiting for your betrayal. The chairman left, closing the door softly behind him. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the shallow, ragged breathing of Ji-hoon and the heavy presence of the two unconscious bodyguards. Ji-hoon moved instantly, pulling Amara toward the emergency stairwell. We have to go. Now. He's going to use the Shinsik gang against us. He'll make it look like a tragic mistake. They ran down the deserted stairs, fleeing the tower. They didn't make it far. In the lower levels of the parking garage, they were ambushed again. Not by the syndicate, but by men clearly wearing the colors of the Shinsik gang. The chairman had made his move, using his enemy to destroy his son's defiance. The fight was brutal. Ji-hoon fought with a desperate, reckless energy, protecting Amara with every move. He was heavily outnumbered. Amara could only watch in terror as he deflected blows, his body absorbing hits that should have incapacitated him. He managed to secure a small, fast car, throwing her inside. Ji-hoon was bleeding badly, a deep cut on his ribs and his shirt soaked in dark fluid. He drove with reckless speed, finally losing the pursuit in the labyrinthine streets of Old Seoul. He pulled into a small, abandoned mechanic's garage, killing the engine and slumping against the wheel. Amara scrambled to his side, her hands shaking as she pulled his stained shirt away from his ribs. The wound was deep. She found a heavy, oil-stained cloth and pressed it against the cut, her eyes flooding with tears. You promised not to make me afraid, she whispered, her voice choked with sorrow. Ji-hoon looked up at her, his face pale and slick with sweat, the dark hair falling across his forehead. He managed a faint, devastating smile, the first one since the art room. I lied, he whispered. He reached up, his hand cupping her cheek, pulling her close one last time. Go to the embassy, Amara. Tell them you were lost. Tell them nothing. I will handle this. I will survive. His eyes, dark and exhausted, pleaded with her to go. Amara clung to him, pressing the rag against his wound, her tears mixing with the blood on his sleeve. She had to choose, run to safety, or stay and fight a lost war with the only person who had ever truly seen her. She looked at the bleeding, injured heir who had given up everything to save her, and made her decision. She pushed him onto the passenger seat and climbed into the driver's side. You're wrong, Ji-hoon, she whispered fiercely, starting the engine. We both survive. She drove them deep into the city shadows, leaving the chairman and the syndicate behind. Amara didn't take Ji-hoon to a hospital. She took him to the last place anyone would look for the heir of the park syndicate, a tiny, rooftop Gazawan room in an impoverished district of Seoul, far from the polished towers of Gangnam. It was a single, cramped room with thin walls, smelling of instant ramen and old dust, but it was outside the geometry of his control. For the next 4 weeks, Amara became his silent, meticulous nurse. She used the skills learned from her mother's unpredictable diplomatic life, moving quietly, asking no questions, trading her prized art supplies for antibiotics and bandages. She kept the windows draped, speaking only in whispers, translating her mother's frantic, monitored messages into lies about being safe at a friend's house. Ji-hoon was feverish and weak, clinging to life. He was no longer the imposing heir. He was just a wounded boy, utterly reliant on the foreign girl he had tried to order around. One evening, As the rain streamed down the window, he opened his eyes and looked at her. The Shinsik gang is in disarray, he rasped, his voice rough. My father is furious. He thought they'd finish me, but he didn't factor in the defiance. He didn't factor in me, Amara corrected, cleaning the cut on his cheek. Ji-hoon offered a weak, grateful smile. The chairman believes I died in the firefight. It's the only way he can save face and stop the Shinsik gang from hunting you. He reached for her hand, his grip frail. You have to leave, Amara. The longer you stay, the more risk I carry. You've done what you needed to do. Survive. Go home. Amara looked at him, not with pity, but with a fierce, resolute love. She knew running meant saving her life, but it also meant abandoning the only person who had ever chosen her over an empire. She stood up, walked to her small backpack, and pulled out her London student visa and her flight confirmation, tearing both into small, irreparable pieces. She let the pieces flutter to the dusty floor. Ji-hoon watched, his eyes wide with a combination of disbelief and a surging, reckless hope. What are you doing? He rasped, struggling to push himself up. I'm staying, Amara said, her voice clear and without a tremble. You can't, he countered, leaning heavily against the thin wall. You will be exposed. My father will use you to flush me out. He will break you. Amara moved to the window, pulling the curtain back slightly to reveal the vast, gray towers of the city. He's already tried, she said. You said I was worth saving. I say you're worth fighting for. She looked back at him, her eyes dark and challenging. We healed here, in the shadows, outside his geometry. I'm not leaving the battlefield, Ji-hoon. I'm just changing my strategy. I will finish my education, and I will stay in the light where you can see me. Ji-hoon stared at her, the final remnants of his rigid, ordered worldview collapsing. She had rejected her freedom, choosing his danger instead. He reached out, his hand shaking slightly as it settled on her wrist, pulling her toward him. If you stay, he whispered, his voice thick with the gravity of the promise. You stay knowing I cannot offer you anything but shadows and intermittent silence. I am a ghost, Amara, and I will always be hunted. Amara didn't answer with words. She slid onto the narrow mattress beside him, her body close, radiating a warmth that cut through the cold fear of the room. She reached up, framing his pale, wounded face between her hands. I draw shadows, Ji-hoon, she murmured, her voice raw with conviction. I know where the light ends, and I know where the truth lives. I'll find you in the silence. She leaned in, and the kiss that followed was an explosion, not of soft tenderness, but of desperate, consuming consumption. It was the long, slow, necessary breath of two souls who had been fighting for survival, finally claiming their sanctuary in each other. Her lips met his, not softly, but with the sudden, furious force of a vow. Ji-hoon responded instantly, his exhaustion momentarily incinerated by pure instinct. He twisted his head, deepening the contact, melding their mouths together in a fierce, possessive claim. Her fingers tightened, burying themselves in his dark hair, tilting his head to meet the uncompromising angle of her demand. She tasted the tang of antiseptic, the faint, metallic scent of blood, and the raw, earthy scent of the tiny room. But underneath it all was just him. His good arm left her wrist, gripping her waist, pulling her closer despite the suppressed groan of pain the movement caused his injured ribs. When they finally broke apart, gasping, their foreheads pressed together, Ji-hoon's eyes were blazing with a raw, terrifying love. His hand remained on her waist, holding her captive against the shadows they now shared. You are mine now, he murmured, the words the only sacred vow he could offer.
She came to heal a child's heart, but ended up awakening a man who forgot how to feel. You talk too much, Nanny, his voice rumbled coldly. Someone has to in this house full of ghosts, she replied with a smirk. He ruled the city with silence, until one woman refused to bow. Then hush, Nanny, he whispered. When fire meets ice, only love survives.